The parking lot of the ShopRite on Delancey Road had that particular stillness that comes after a hard rain. The kind where the asphalt holds the sky in it, and everything looks wider than it is. Marcus Hale stood at the self-checkout with a box of mac and cheese, a loaf of bread, and a can of chicken soup, and a termination letter folded into thirds inside his jacket pocket. He had been standing there for 40 seconds already. The machine wanted payment. He had $23 in his wallet and $41.60 in his checking account. Behind him, a woman with a basket over her arm was trying not to look impatient. She had strawberries, a wedge of cheese, a small bunch of parsley, the particular groceries of a person who knew what they were cooking that night. He paid. He bagged his 3 items and walked to his truck. He sat in the cab for a moment with the engine off. The letter had come at 2014 that afternoon. Budget restructuring. Position eliminated. Effective immediately. The woman in HR had handed it to him with the posture of someone delivering news they had delivered many times and had learned not to carry home. He had shaken her hand because that was the kind of person he was, and he had walked out of the Kellerman County Schools Administrative Building into a parking lot that looked exactly like every parking lot he had ever stood in, and somehow like no place he had ever been before. He drove the 11 minutes to the house on Barrow Street. Nora was at the kitchen table with colored pencils spread and a loose fan and a sheet of construction paper in front of her. She was 6 years old and serious about it. The paper had a dog on it that looked more like a cloud with legs, and she was coloring it with the focused attention of someone who knew exactly what they were doing, even if no one else did. "Hi, Daddy." "Hi, Bug. I'm making you a birthday card. My birthday was in March." "This is for next year's," she said, without looking up. He set the grocery bag on the counter. He stood at the window for a moment with his back to her and looked at the yard, which needed the leaves raked and the hose coiled in, and a dozen other things he had been meaning to get to. He did the math while he stood there. Severance would be 2 weeks' pay. Rent was due in 18 days. The balance in his savings account, the one he had spent 3 years rebuilding after the divorce, sat at $940. The math was tight in a way that math only gets when you have a child and you are doing it alone. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Bug. Can we have scrambled eggs for dinner? With the cheese?" He turned around. She was still coloring. The cloud dog had turned yellow. "Yeah," he said. "We can do that." He made the eggs. He grated the cheese from a block because she said the block kind melted different, and she was right, and he had learned to stop arguing with her about it. They ate at the kitchen table under the good light because the kitchen was the warmest room in the house, and October had arrived earlier than expected. After dinner, she asked him 3 questions about whether dogs dreamed, whether clouds were heavy, and whether the moon was the same one every night, or different ones that looked the same. He answered the first 2 with confidence and the third one honestly, which was that he wasn't entirely sure, and she accepted this with the gravity of a person who understood that some questions were still open. He got her to bed at 8:15. He read her 2 chapters of the book about the rabbit and the lighthouse keeper, which was the one they were on, and he sat beside her until her breathing changed and the tension left her hands. Then he went to the kitchen and sat at the table with his phone. He opened his banking app. He looked at the number for a long time. He closed the app. He thought about his brother in Tucson who would offer money without being asked and mean it genuinely, and about the fact that he would not be able to take it. He thought about the woman at the ShopRite with the strawberries and the parsley, who had probably gone home and made something good and not thought about him at all, the way you don't think about people in grocery store lines because there is no reason to. He turned off the kitchen light and lay down on the couch in his clothes and did not sleep for a long time. What he did not know, in that kitchen, in that particular dark, was that the woman with the strawberries had been thinking about him since the parking lot. Her name was Claire O'Doom. She was 38 years old and had been running the Kellerman County Community Land Trust for 4 years, which meant she spent most of her days solving problems that had no good solutions and writing grant applications for money that was never quite enough. She had a 12-year-old son named Theo who went to Barrow Street Middle, and a house on the east side of town that needed a new furnace and a level of organizational discipline she could only maintain between 6 and 9 a.m., after which the day took over. She had been at the ShopRite because she had forgotten to eat lunch and realized, at 5,047 in the evening, that she had nothing at home that required less than 45 minutes to prepare. She had grabbed the strawberries and the cheese and the parsley and stood behind the man at the self-checkout and tried not to rush him with her posture, which was something she was actively working on. He had paid with a card that declined once, then a second card. He had rearranged the items, put the soup back, then taken it again, stood for a moment, and put back the bread instead. The whole thing had lasted less than a minute. He had bagged the mac and cheese and the soup and the bread. He had taken the bread back after all, and walked to the doors with the particular straightness of someone who had been watched doing something hard, and did not want to give it any more space than it had already taken. She drove home. She made a caprese with the cheese and the parsley, which was not what parsley was for, but she was tired. Theo ate cereal and told her about a disagreement he was having with his science teacher about the classification of viruses. She listened with one ear, and with the other half of her mind, she was still in the ShopRite parking lot, watching a man in a gray fleece jacket walk to a truck that had a dent in the rear panel and a faded sticker from a school district she recognized. Kellerman County Schools. She had seen that sticker before. She knew the district. She had spent 3 months the previous fall negotiating a community partnership with their facilities office, which meant she knew the director of operations, a woman named Barbara Crane who returned emails inside 20 minutes and had a photograph of a Cordy on her desk. She called Barbara the next morning at 8:30. She described the man as best she could. Gray fleece, brown truck, dark hair, early 40s maybe. The kind of tired that is not from one bad night. Barbara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, quietly, "That sounds like it might be Marcus Hale. Budget cuts. Administration, curriculum support. Good guy. He was with us 5 years." Claire thanked her and did not ask anything else. She found him through the district's public staff directory, which still listed him because directories are slow to update. Marcus T. Hale, curriculum specialist. It had a county email address that was probably no longer active, and an office extension that would ring to a room he no longer sat in. She did not use those. She looked him up in the county property records instead, because the land trust had access to those, and because she told herself this was reasonable, which it was, barely. She drove to Barrow Street on a Thursday evening with a covered dish and a card. He opened the door. He looked at her for a moment with the expression of a man who was trying to place a face from a context he could not immediately locate. "You were behind me at the ShopRite," she said. "On Tuesday." He was quiet. "I noticed you had to put something back. I've been there." She held out the dish. "It's chili. My kid won't eat it and I made too much. I'm not asking you to accept charity. I'm asking you to save me the container." He looked at her for another beat. "How did you find out where I live?" "I work for the County Land Trust. Property records." "That's either resourceful or alarming." "Probably both," she said. "You can say no." He took the dish. He did not say thank you immediately, which she respected. He said, "I have to be honest, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Reheat it at 350, 20 minutes. Put some shredded cheese on top if you have it." He looked at the dish and then at her. "I have cheese," he said, as though this was unexpected. She left. She sat in her car in front of his house for a moment before she drove away. She did not know why she had come. She knew exactly why she had come. She had learned, in the last 4 years of her particular work, that the thing about people who did not ask for anything was that they were usually the most worth asking. This was not a policy. It was just something she had noticed to be true. He called the number on the card she had tucked into the foil of the dish 3 days later. It was a Sunday morning. She was in the middle of a grant application, and the call was a reason to stop. "The chili was good," he said. "I know. I wanted to return the container. You didn't have to call for that." A pause. "Yeah, I know." She waited. He said, "I heard from Barbara Crane that you do work with the county on housing. Community land trust. Affordable homeownership mostly. Some commercial preservation. I used to do curriculum partnership work with 3 of your neighboring districts. Wrote federal grant applications for Title I programs. I know, she said. Barbara told me that too. Another pause. Longer. I'm not in a position to volunteer, he said. I'm not asking you to volunteer. Silence on the line. Then, what are you asking? She turned away from the grant application on her screen. The trust has a federal capacity building grant cycle opening in February. I've missed it twice because we don't have someone who understands the compliance documentation on the education housing intersection piece. It's technical. It's specific. I've been trying to explain it to a consultant for 8 months, and I am tired of explaining it. I'm not a housing person. No. But the grant is a Title I adjacent framework. The crosswalk documents are exactly the kind of thing you've done. I'm not guessing. I read your district's last 3 Title I applications. The methodology sections. Quiet. When? Grant closes February 14th. Probably 12 to 15 hours of actual work, spread over whenever works for you. I have a 6-year-old. I know. I'm not putting her in after-school care to do consulting work. I'm not asking you to. She paused. I have a 12-year-old who would genuinely enjoy having a 6-year-old around for a few hours on a weekend. He just doesn't know it yet. He did not say yes. He said he would think about it. She said that was fine and returned to the grant application, which was suddenly easier to write. He thought about it for 4 days. He thought about it while he drove Nora to school and while he applied for 3 positions he was underqualified for and 2 he was overqualified for, and while he stood in the ShopRite again on Friday, this time with a list and a budget written in the Notes app on his phone. He thought about what it meant to accept help from someone who had tracked him down through public property records, and whether that was the kind of thing a reasonable person did or didn't do, and he concluded that it depended on what they did with whatever they found. She had brought chili. He called her back on Thursday. He said, "Send me what you have and I'll tell you if I can actually help." She sent it that afternoon. He read it in 2 sittings. The grant framework was more complex than she had made it sound, which meant it was exactly as complex as she had made it sound, and she had been being considerate in her framing. The education housing crosswalk documentation had a structural problem that was not her fault. It was the result of 3 different program offices using 3 different definitions of the same term over 4 reauthorization cycles, which created a compliance gap that looked small in the application and enormous in the audit. He knew this particular problem. He had seen a version of it in 2019 when a partner district had nearly lost a grant over it. He wrote her a 2-page memo. She called him 12 minutes after he sent it. "Where have you been for 8 months?" she said. "Barrow Street." "That's not an answer. It's accurate." She laughed. It was a short laugh, the kind that doesn't expect itself. "Can you come in? I want to show you the full application architecture before you go further." "When?" "Saturday morning. 9. I'll have coffee." Theo makes decent coffee. He learned from a YouTube video about pour-over ratios, and now no one else is allowed near the machine. "I have Nora. Bring her. I told you." He did not answer immediately. "She has opinions," he said finally. "So does Theo. They'll be fine." He came on Saturday. Nora wore her red jacket and carried a stuffed animal that was technically a narwhal but which she called Gerald, and she stood in Claire's doorway and looked at the house with the expression she used when she was forming a judgment she was not yet ready to share. Theo answered the door. He was 12 and tall for it, with the particular watchfulness of a kid who has spent time as the only person in a household who understood the printer. He looked at Nora. Nora looked at him. "Is that a narwhal?" he said. "His name is Gerald," Nora said. "Cool," Theo said with sincerity. "Do you know narwhals are the only animal whose tusk is actually a tooth?" Nora considered this. "Gerald has feelings about that," she said. "Does he want to see my room? I have a poster of ocean animals." "He might," Nora said. They disappeared up the stairs. Marcus stood in the doorway. Claire handed him a cup of coffee. "Pour over," she said. "I can tell," he said. He took a sip. "It's good." "Don't tell him that in front of me. He already has opinions about the roast level." They went to the dining room table, which she had covered in printed pages organized into color-coded sections. He stood and looked at it for a moment, the way he looked at problems, which was with his hands at his sides, and his head slightly tilted, the way a person looks at something they are already halfway through solving. For 2 hours they worked. She talked through the program design. He asked questions that were short and surgical. She answered them directly because she had spent 4 years developing the discipline of directness, which was the only way to survive grant writing without losing your mind. He took no notes in the margins. He asked to see the compliance appendix and read it without touching it. He stopped once to drink coffee and once to listen to something happen upstairs, which turned out to be Gerald the narwhal falling behind Theo's desk and both children narrating the retrieval. At the end of 2 hours, he said, "Your crosswalk document needs to cite the 2021 HUD Education Joint Guidance Memo, not the 2018 one. The 2021 supersedes it on exactly the section your compliance narrative is hanging on." She stared at him. "Where did you find the 2021 memo?" "I helped write a section of it. I was on a federal comment period working group. I still have it bookmarked." She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. Something in the air of the dining room rearranged itself slightly, the way air does when two people have just understood something about a conversation they thought they were having. "I'm going to need you to send me that memo," she said. "I'll send it when I get home. And I need you to be the one who writes the compliance narrative, not me." He was quiet. "I can pay you as a contracted specialist. It's not a lot. The trust budget is—" She paused. "It's honest, let's say." "How honest?" she told him. He looked at the window. Outside, a gray squirrel was working on something in the yard with the total concentration of an animal that does not multitask. "It's enough," he said. "For right now, it's enough." He sent the memo when he got home. She sent him the contract Tuesday. He signed it and sent it back before Nora got off the bus. He came in 3 more Saturdays. The work was the kind of work he had forgotten he was good at. The kind that required holding a large structure in your head while attending to small specific details. The way you hold a map while reading a sign. He was good at that. He had always been good at that, and then life had gotten in the way of it for a while. The way life does. And he had been good at other things instead, and now he was here at a dining room table in a house on the east side of Kellerman County, with a woman who underlined things in her source documents in 3 different colors. Nora and Theo reached a détente by the second Saturday. She brought Gerald. He'd cleared a space on his desk for Gerald to sit while they worked on a shared project, which involved illustrating every ocean animal in order of depth. He had a colored pencil set with 120 colors, a number Nora considered important. The application went in on February 11th, 3 days before the deadline. Marcus drove home that night and sat in the kitchen after Nora was in bed. He opened his banking app. The number was not the number it had been in October. It was better. Not comfortable, not yet, but better the way that February is better than January even when it is still cold, measurably and with some reason to believe in what comes next. He had applied for 4 positions in the past 2 months. One had called him back. He was doing a second interview on Thursday. He did not know, on the night of February 11th, that Claire had already sent his name to the federal program officer on the grant before she submitted the application. She had sent it in the form of a 3-paragraph professional endorsement, which was within her rights as the applicant organization, and which cited specifically the 2021 memo contribution and the compliance narrative, which she described as the clearest documentation of the Title I housing intersection she had encountered in 4 years in the field. She did not tell him she had done this. She also did not tell him that the federal program officer had forwarded her email to the regional HUD Education Partnership Coordinator, a woman named Dr. Sandra Kell, who was building a national technical assistance team and had been looking for someone who understood both the education policy side and the community development compliance framework. Dr. Kell had written back to Claire within 18 hours. Claire had written back to Dr. Kell. And then she had not said anything to Marcus, because she was not sure yet whether it would come to anything, and because she had learned, in 4 years of working with people who did not want to be disappointed again, that you did not tell someone about a door until you knew it was going to open. She found out it was going to open on a Wednesday morning in late March when Dr. Kell called her directly. She called Marcus that afternoon. He was in the parking lot of Nora's school, having arrived 8 minutes early out of a habit he had developed when she was in pre-K and had not been able to break. He picked up on the second ring. "Are you sitting down?" she said. "I'm in a parking lot." "That'll do," she told him. He was quiet for long enough that she checked to make sure the call had not dropped. "Marcus." "Yeah. This is a real offer. Dr. Kell is real. The team is real. It's remote, mostly. There are 2 in-person convenings a year. The compensation is federal contract scale. You sent my name. I sent your work. Your name was attached to it. You didn't tell me." "No." Another long pause. "Why not?" She watched a bus turn the corner at the far end of the school lot. "Because you've been doing everything right for months, and things have still been hard, and I didn't want to be the person who got your hopes up and then had to tell you it didn't work out." He was quiet. "I should have told you," she said. "I'm telling you now." He didn't answer for a moment. Outside the school, the first kids were starting to come through the doors, that small, unstoppable tide of backpacks and winter coats. He was looking for the red puffer jacket. "I see her," he said, almost to himself. Then, to Claire, "I have to call you back." He called her back 40 minutes later from the kitchen, while Nora was at the table with her colored pencils. Same spread as October. Different project. She was drawing an ocean animal now, something that might have been a ray. "Yes," he said when Claire picked up. "I'll send you Dr. Kell's contact." "Okay." A pause, not uncomfortable. "You brought me chili," he said. "It was too much for one household. You looked me up in property records. I work for the county land trust. You sent my name to a federal coordinator without telling me." "I sent you work," she said again, "with your name on it." He looked at Nora, who had finished the ray and was now starting something else in the corner of the page. Something with 4 legs that was either a horse or a bear or Gerald in a new form. "Thank you," he said. "Don't," she said. "You earned it. I wasn't thanking you for the job." She was quiet. "The chili," he said. "I never actually said thank you for that." She laughed. "Not short this time. You can say thank you by coming to the February grant convening in April. They moved it. It's in Hartford. I have to present the compliance narrative, and I'd like to have the person who wrote it in the room." Hartford. It's 1 day. I'll drive. Theo and Nora. My sister can take Theo. Nora can come. There's a children's program at the hotel. He thought about this. She'll want to bring Gerald. I assumed. He looked at the table, where Nora was now adding what appeared to be wings to whatever she was drawing, giving it a quality that made it both more and less identifiable. "Bug," he said. She looked up. "We might take a trip to Connecticut in April, for Daddy's work." She looked at him with the careful attention she applied to things that were going to require an opinion. "Is it a hotel?" "Yeah." "Does it have a pool?" "I don't know." "Ask," she said, and went back to her drawing. He looked at the phone. "She wants to know if the hotel has a pool." "I'll check," Claire said. "Okay." Marcus. "Yeah. The chili was also for me," she said. "I should tell you that. I make it when I'm unsettled, and I had made too much of it because I was more unsettled than usual that week. You gave me somewhere to put it." He didn't say anything for a moment. "What were you unsettled about?" "I don't know yet," she said. "I think I'm starting to." He set his coffee cup down carefully, half a second slower than he meant to. Nora did not look up. The kitchen was warm. Outside, March was doing what March does, which is pretend to be over while remaining entirely itself. I'll see you Saturday, he said. Same time. He hung up. He looked at the drawing Nora was still working on. It had wings now, and what appeared to be a tail and 4 legs and something coming out of its forehead that was either a horn or an antenna. Bug, what is that? Gerald, she said, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. Gerald is a narwhal. Gerald has a lot of feelings, she said. Sometimes he needs more forms. He looked at her for a long moment and felt, in the particular way you feel it when the feeling does not have a name yet, that the kitchen looked different than it had in October. Same table, same light, same yellow mixing bowl on the counter. But something in the proportions had shifted, the way a room shifts when someone who belongs in it has started, quietly, to be there. He sat down across from her. He picked up a colored pencil from the fan on the table. He chose green because green was the one she always left for him. What should I draw? He said. She considered this seriously. Gerald needs a friend, she said. He pulled the paper toward him and drew.